here tonight. My name is Carrie Jeter. I am joined by these two lovely, awesome moms in our community as well who are helping champion this fight.
My name is Sarah Fox. I am a resident of Tenino, and I live exactly 1 mile from the sexually violent predator home that's going in on February 1st.
Kendall Tuttle, and she lives a half a mile away. So we definitely want to pause for a moment of silence to begin tonight, actually, for the family of 5 who had perished in the fire yesterday morning. So we can just start, take your hats off and have a moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. All right, and they posted a flag. They would like us to also start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would please stand up and your hats again, and say I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, so we are women of faith as well, and we would like to open with prayer. There's been a lot of prayer going on and a lot of people who are standing up of our community, so I'd like to open with prayer as well. Dear God, thank you so much for this opportunity, for our community to come together and stand united for a just cause. Lord, we just ask for your wisdom and your guidance as we have been fighting this fight since we've become aware of it. And Lord, we just ask, I believe that this isn't going to happen. And I'm going to stand on that firmly, that through the people and the things that you have moving and behind the scenes that aren't even aware, that this community is going to remain safe. You call us to be protectors and defenders and peacemakers, and God, we love and to love. And we love this community of Tenino and Maytown. And out of that love is why we are defending and why we are protecting this community. Lord, just this time we offer it back to you and let your glory be known. In Jesus' name, amen.
Our first speaker tonight is going to be Shelley. If she wants to come up here and speak a little about the Maytown Playground, that'd be great.
Hi there, my name is Shelley Haney, and I moved into the Maytown community a little over 2 years ago with my husband. But we've had our shop there for about 10 years, and it's always been a dream for us to put a playground in the community that we live. And over the COVID years, we didn't have the opportunity to spend as much time getting to know the neighbors and our community as we wanted, but there was a close-knit group on the Peterson and 146th Avenue lane where we talked about what it would look like and how important it would be to have a playground that was close by in the Maytown neighborhood. Right now, children have to go all the way to Tenino or Tumwater or Centralia to find a playground. So once it hit our radar that this facility was coming, one of the things that we thought is how can we put our energy into trying to make things better. And a plan was just put in place, and it just all came together rather quickly. And everything that we asked for just materialized. And so in an effort to kind of use the guidelines that DSHS has set up for its own facilities, saying that they cannot be next door to a school, a preschool, a park, or a playground. We wanted to make sure that Supreme Living and those state agencies that were responsible for bringing this to our neighborhood understood that we were there first and that we have a right to decide what goes into our neighborhood and we chose to put something that matters, that we want. And I think that it's just been an amazing week to see this come together and be built. We had a community build yesterday, on Saturday, and despite the rain, the sleet, the snow, we had over 50 volunteers working all day long tirelessly. We had our perimeter fencing, which by the way looks much better than Supreme Living's, go up. And we had our playground unit built and concreted. We got our border timbers up. We got more clearing done. We got some danger trees taken down. We have a parking area. We still have some work to do over the next week before we can get this open. We are bringing in wood chips next Tuesday, so if anybody wants to come help, and we're still trying to get a few donations. But it's a really great thing, and I couldn't be more proud to be a part of it. And I thank everybody who's turned out or donated or supported the effort.
If you're interested in helping her project at all, where you can find her, she's on Facebook. Can you give us the name of the Facebook page?
It's the Friends of Maytown Community Playground, so you should be able to search for that.
Thank you. Okay, so my name is Carrie Jeter. I don't think I said that at the very beginning. And I was asked to join this fight for multiple reasons. I've lived here since 2013. I know that's probably not nearly as long as a lot of you who were born and raised here and have legacies here. But I was moved here because of the Army, and I chose to stay in Tenino to raise our kids. We were junior in high school, one in kindergarten, and so we just have really fallen in love with this community. We're active members of the VFW and the American Legion. I've been an advocate for over 2 decades for military sexual trauma victims and survivors, as well as others in intimate partner violence. And so with my experience in the military, being a media liaison and things of that nature, I bring a different element to this. And so tonight, what I really want to talk about is the safety of our community and what we call military operation security. But really, there are some comments that are coming on our Facebook page. Not everybody that's in our community on that public group is actually a friend of Tenino. So I really want to caution you to not say when you're home alone, to not say how many kids or people live in your house, to not say what bus stop your kid gets off at. And I think sometimes we think we've created a really safe place and a lot of momentum on that group, but not everybody that's there. We're weeding people out every single day who are not good people on that page. So please just be very cautious about what you're sharing. That's my biggest thing. The other thing, too, that we really want to talk about is these aren't just regular sex offenders. That even sounds kind of funny coming out of your mouth, but this isn't a level 1, these aren't just level 2, and they aren't just level 3. These gentlemen that they're asking, these predators that they're bringing into this house, are the worst of the worst. For the law, it says that they're the worst of the worst. These are sexually violent predators. We have some of the strongest sex offender registration in the nation here and notification laws right here. And the secure civil confinement commitment was originated here in Washington State. And now 19 other states have those facilities as well as Washington, D.C. So we gave you guys a little flyer and a little handout. If you didn't get one, I think they're on the back table. And we'll post this in the group too, so if you're not a paper person. And we pulled some of the definitions right out of the RCW for you to kind of just educate yourself a bit more about who these individuals are. But as well, I just want to make note here that they're not, they've been convicted or charged with a sex crime, and they also suffer from a mental abnormality or personality disorder, making them likely to re-engage in a predatory act again. And so 2 that have come up in conversation, Kevin O'Sullivan has mentioned Mitchell Gaff, and he is actually currently living in Olympia. And this man's only been convicted of 3 crimes, but per his disclosure through his treatment, he has numerous victims, and he has no regret. There's no emotion. He's a motivated person, they said. He's motivated to get out of there so he can be free, so he can offend again. It will happen. Another one that's come to mind that is currently living up in Olympia also is Calvin Malone. And this man, for over 20 years, was a Boy Scout leader in Germany and various states throughout the United States. And 20 years, he has numerous hundreds of victims, but only 5 came forward. These are the kind of men that will be living in this house. So this is why we're standing up and fighting against this, because they're not just level 3 offenders. They have an abnormality, they have a personality disorder, that they don't have emotion, and they'll do it again. So this is why we're so strong and adamant about not allowing this house to come into residential rural Tenino. Again, just be really cautious about what you're sharing online. Also, if you're digging up any information, we absolutely want to have anything that you find out about Supreme Living, about the men who are coming, or people who are helping us in the fight. But let's not share that publicly. Let's not give, quote unquote, the enemy the ammunition against us. So if you have stuff, we have an email that we have established called, it's Tenino PAC, P-A-C, as in Paul Alpha Charlie, @gmail.com. If you have information that you want to share for us so we can do more digging or relay it to law enforcement, to our state legislators who are working with us in this fight, county commissioners, whatever, please give us the information there, not on the public group in Facebook. And we've been posting things that get vetted through us for graphics and whatnot to share, and we'll continue to do that as well. Last week, Sarah and I had the privilege, Facebook actually, I tagged state representatives and our senators on a Facebook page, on a Facebook post on my private Facebook page, and they were all very receptive. One reached out immediately, one answered the call the next day and put us on the books that week. And we were able to meet with Representative Couture, Representative Griffey, and a staffer from McEwen's office, Senator McEwen. And I'm actually, when we left there, Sarah said this, and she said it so well, they heard us. They are behind us 100% in this fight. We have multiple conversations now at this point, but we're meeting with them again on Wednesday. So looking forward to a follow-up with them and what they're doing to move forward. I do know that some draft law is getting, we're drafting that up as well to help prevent this from happening anywhere else. I think that's all I have for my piece of the pie tonight. We will have 10 minutes at the end for some open conversation, so if questions come up, please write them down and we'll give you the floor to ask those next. Next, I'm going to have Kendall come up, and she's going to talk about a bit more formalizing our group. Thank you for your time.
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. My name is Kendall Tuttle. I am a PTA member. My husband and I are the president of Tenino Youth Wrestling, and I have 4 small children, all 10 and under. Again, I live just a half mile from this property. Literally, my woods just connect right there. So thank you all for coming and supporting our community. I really appreciate it. While Tenino and Supreme Living are at the heart of this issue, this is not a Tenino problem, and this is not a Supreme Living problem. We're quickly realizing that this is a much, much bigger issue. This is a legislative problem where for-profit companies have found a loophole and they're taking advantage of it to make huge profits. This is happening without any accountability from the top down. It's leaving our communities at risk. Everybody involved from the top down is washing their hands of this situation, and sexually violent predators involved. And that's everybody: legislators, commissioners, the Department of Corrections, DSHS, the Special Commitment Center, and all of the state agencies who have been involved with the release of these predators. Nobody wants to take responsibility for it. What needs to happen now is that we need to get statewide legislators on board with creating or amending the Washington state laws regarding the release of these predators. This is a difficult thing, it's very expensive, and it takes a tremendous amount of work. Carrie, Sarah, and I, along with many of you in here, have dove into this process in a big way just over the last week. We have been meeting with commissioners, legislators, a staff member from the senator's office, and officials are listening. We are now creating a political action committee. The 3 of us are. This is a PAC, that's what I'll refer to it as. A PAC allows us to raise money tax-free to use for advertising. It also allows us to raise money for legislative matters. We have to get the majority on our side to make any changes happen. We need to reach all of the legislators regardless of their political association. Keeping communities safe is not a Republican issue and it's not a Democratic issue. This is a statewide community issue that just happened to start right here in Tenino. But our voices need to be heard. Most importantly, we are raising money for an attorney right now. We need to file the injunction to stop Supreme Living before the first creditor arrives on February 1st. Stopping Supreme Living is important right now, but we have to follow through with all of the plans that are put in place so that this doesn't happen again right in our community or in any other communities across the state. Thank you guys again for coming, and I'll introduce Sarah.
I naturally have a loud voice, so hopefully you guys can hear me. My name is Sarah Fox. I live 1 mile down from this proposed house. I am a social worker and I am a wife. I am an active volunteer for the Thurston County Food Bank, the American Red Cross, and the Special Olympics. Like Carrie said before, you guys do have some packets. I do want to point out on the one of the packets here, the current house that's going to be housing these SVPs, the sexually violent predators, there are some safety measures that have not been met. And so I really want you guys to look at this and realize that this house is not a secured facility for these men. I also want you guys to realize that this house only has 2 chaperones for 5 men. They are free to roam about our community with these chaperones. So just want to make that quite clear to you guys. In your packet, there is also a legislative hotline. You can call this hotline Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. You call them as much as you'd like, and you bombard our legislatures with our concerns. So with that being said, I just want to touch a little bit about what an injunction is. It is a court order requiring a party, in this case Supreme Living, to cease action moving forward with this LRA home. The first resident is scheduled to move in on February 1st. We are in the process of retaining legal assistance and have obtained counsel, and we're formally moving toward that this week. We need individuals within the 0.5-mile radius for an injunction-specific route, and any additional people are welcome to fill out forms they feel that they want to contribute to the efforts of this case. As a group, we have some of the cost covered, but of course, if you feel like in any way you have the capacity to help us out financially, just like Kendall mentioned, we are forming a PAC, so we will be getting this going as soon as tomorrow, hopefully finalized on Wednesday. If you are able to contribute, every little bit counts. To be frank with you guys, we need about $5,000 more to get this started. But I feel that with our hometown community, we'll do what we can to get this first resident stopped. So that's where we are in there. I want to go ahead and introduce Kevin O'Sullivan. He's going to talk about some of the protests and rallies that we're going to be doing this week. Okay, great. I just had word that we have Sheriff Derek Sanders, so if you can come up here and speak real quick today.
Well, good evening. This is the kind of turnout that I kind of expected from some place like tonight. So, nice work. For those of you that don't know me yet, my name is Sheriff Sanders. I'm your newly elected sheriff. And if you haven't figured this out yet, I am the type of sheriff that would prefer to take proactive, substantial action and mess up, as opposed to sitting back and doing nothing. John F. Kennedy has a really good speech about that, but I can't remember it. So I wanted to let you guys know, because as we kind of track this, and this isn't me, right? This is you guys. As far as gaining traction on this issue and making it important, I can tell you that Fox and Friends has reached out to me to get this on a national level. This isn't something that I'm doing. This is something that's only possible through a turnout like this and the pressure that you guys are creating, so keep it up. I wanted to let you guys know, though, last time we spoke, I went to the, I guess if you want to call that a public hearing with Supreme Living. We didn't have any answers. And I told you I'd get you guys some answers, but the only thing I was able to get you at that point in time is that DOC doesn't really have a lot of concrete answers. Well, we are basically almost finished with our policy and procedure for how the Sheriff's Office is going to handle this, and I wanted to update you guys with that. Because although none of us want this house to be in there, if it is in there, then the Sheriff's Office has a duty to let you guys know how we're going to handle business. So, the first thing I did was I met with the prosecutor's office and we pulled from the RCW to figure out what exactly we could do. At this point in time, we've located an RCW. It's under the escape offenses under the 9A title. And the specific RCW is sexually violent predator escape. It fits this scenario almost perfectly, and that is the RCW in which we plan to basically enforce should a call come in that one of these individuals has left this not so secure facility. The good news about this offense is it's a Class A felony with a mandatory prison sentence of 60 months. So, in the event that one of these individuals leaves this house, we'll draft up our procedure for our deputies to follow, but they'll be able to immediately establish probable cause for the most serious classification of a crime possible. At that point in time, we will obviously start dumping our resources into the Tenino area. That'll look like canines, that'll look like asking for State Patrol's airplane, and just basically flooding it with the 7 deputies that we have on duty at that time. So, that's kind of the first part of our response. The second part of it is what happens when they get into a car. One of the things that I had to look at when I ran for sheriff, it was a big part of why I ran for sheriff, is that in law enforcement we spent a lot of time blaming the state without looking internally at ourselves about what we can do better. And what bothered me about how the Sheriff's Office is being run is that we had a situation where we had a pursuit policy from the state that was very restrictive. Our policy was even more strict. So what we also found is that the RCW actually allows us to pursue one of these individuals for escape. That is a pursuable offense under RCW. Our current policy that I inherited says that we cannot pursue them. So, the first thing I'm doing tomorrow now is we're going to go draft a new policy that allows us to pursue these individuals wherever they go in this country. I'll have a very blunt conversation with my deputies about just how aggressive they should be if one of these individuals leaves as far as pursuing them, if one of these individuals leaves the facility. And so I just wanted to give you guys kind of that update because I know it's not what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear in the event that this thing continues and an injunction fails or something like that. So I don't have much else. Obviously, if there's any quick questions that I can answer for you guys, if you guys have something that is super pressing maybe, that you want me to answer publicly, I'm more than happy to do that, but I obviously don't want to take out the majority of this program. I know there's other things to get to. So I just want to let you guys know that the Sheriff's Office is going to deal with this in every way possible, try and keep you guys safe and do the best job that we can at all times. So.
We're just to honor his time, I'm not sure what he has to get to, but if you have questions right now that you want to ask him, we'll get to your questions. Okay, man in the back. Can you speak real loud, please?
I'm wondering if there would be some sort of alert system if one of these people escapes so the community would know.
Yeah, good question. So that's probably going to come in the form of social media because that seems to be the quickest way to get word around. Other than that, there's not really anything like that's super consistent across the board, right? Like a lot of people aren't going to take the time to set up like a text message notification and things like that. But the word of mouth through social media and through our news outlets is probably going to be the quickest way that we're going to do that. That's kind of the other thing we're doing. Obviously, if you notice, our social media presence is a lot better, and we're working right now to get all of our on-duty night shift sergeants access to that social media page so they can push stuff out to you as it's occurring. Instead of the whole, like, the next morning we kind of follow up with you guys. So that is something that we're working on as well. You know, that would be a conversation I would have to talk with the. Yeah, it depends. In criminal law, there's a difference between negligence and recklessness and intent. And that's part of the mental status of a crime that we have to accomplish. So that would require an investigation. Obviously, if one of the caregivers is like helping them escape, then we'll chase them just as far too. But if it's a situation where, just seeing how this whole thing's put together, where like the caregiver's making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and the dude walks out the back door, that's not really like a crime on the caregiver's part. That's just really poor planning from the state and how they're operating this. So that would be a case-by-case basis. But there's no crime in the caregiver not knowing, as long as they make a good faith effort to report.
Any questions on this side? Okay.
Well, as it stands right now, we rely on the criminal self-report that as I said, or we moving forward with the U.S. Senator, when we have that information. If it can be more, how are we going to know that it's safe? How are you going to know that it's safe?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that's all part of the DSHS requirements, is that they would have to report an escape. That would go back into, if they are intentionally not providing that information, that would be a crime. They'd be aiding and abetting. We would consider that to be complicit. So if the caregiver is like, oh, he left, I'm just not going to call, that's where we would have a conversation with the prosecutor's office about going to criminal. And again, there's a pretty hefty. I don't know that I put a whole lot of concern into the caregivers being complicit. That would be a Class B felony for a caregiver to not disclose that stuff, and it basically help them escape. So I don't know that that's where I would place most of my fear. It'd be mostly just in the fact that these people running and the caregiver calling and saying, yeah.
Last question. Right here. You said that you would approach it through social media if somebody was released and they couldn't be found. What about silver alerts? What about the amber alerts? You put them up and it goes over our TVs, it goes over our cell phones, it goes over the monitors on the highway. Can we approach people that way?
That's a good question. All those programs are run by the state. They're not run by the sheriff's office, so I would be open to having that conversation about creating a new alert. We can call it like a yuck alert or something like that. But yeah, I would definitely be willing to entertain that as far as like a silver alert kind of thing. But again, those are alerts that are run by State Patrol. We basically, whenever we have a missing person, we fill out the form and send it to them, and they do all the work on that. So, thank you so much.
Okay, again, we will have more question time at the end here. Sarah was going to be introducing Kevin O'Sullivan. He has been a part of our group as well. We met last Saturday, and so he's been really involved, and so we've kind of named him the rally guy. So he's going to come up and talk about protesting and how we can rally together and keep the momentum going. So Kevin, please come on up, William.
Thank you all very much for being here tonight. I want to give you a little bit of my background, and I've done this thing before with the Capitol. When I was a county commissioner, we got word from a neighborhood in Boston Harbor that there was a daycare center out there, and right across the street, they were going to put Mitchell Gaff. Now, I was a police officer, retired police officer up north, and I knew that name, and I started digging. And then I found out that it was him. And so I put together the prosecutor and the sheriff. We worked as a team, the commission worked as a team, and we stopped them. This is stoppable. I will tell you, the PTA in Boston Harbor and the community just rallied just what's happening here. Mitchell Gaff, let me just tell you, she told you a little bit about him, but I know a lot of the inside stuff on him. You can go on the internet and look up his medical report, and you'll see the psychiatrist saying that Mitchell Gaff is highly likely to offend again. And when I stopped the state from putting them in, I went up north and I had every PD put me in contact with the victims, because they have to go through the court system in Snohomish County to be released. And I filled that courthouse. Well, actually, it wasn't me as much as it was, the victims. And they went in there and they got that judge to stop, and they threw him back in jail. And looking at his background and his assaults, and he assaulted young children. And he started to get more violent and more violent and more violent. And I said, no, hell no. Now I want to thank Chairwoman Mejia. She's here tonight. She's in the back. And I want to thank her for being here. Because one of the things I did is I knew that the Board of Health is probably more powerful than the County Commission. And we were starting to work on an ordinance to state that Mitchell Gas, we have it inside the ordinance, that in the interest of public safety, public health, and the children, it was hell no. And I told the state that this was coming. And then they backed out immediately. After, I will have to say, we went up there, we had an appointment to see Gary Locke, and he went out the back door. Let me put it that way. He didn't stay around. And then they pulled the pin. And then the judge sent him back. So it worked. This can work again. But this has gone a little bit too long now. Because these people are not, they can't fix them. They won't be fixed. They will, here we got a playground right behind the house. We've got a ski lake up in front. It's a smorgasbord for these guys. And it cannot happen. So I'm going to do everything in my power, and I'm going to ask the commission to follow the same steps that I had to try to do an ordinance to stop them from putting a house in. And we can do it. And so then we have what we call a call to action. That's this form right here. It gives everybody a time and place on Thursday at 4:30 at the Capitol, where we're all going to meet. We have signs you can hand out, and we're going to go see the governor. And Representative Jim Walsh, who's wonderful to be here tonight, he is going to There's a lot of questions that need to be asked, and like we just talked, said how many assaults have happened on McNeil Island from these guys? We don't have any numbers. We don't have, the only thing we have is a flim flam show. It goes down to Tenino. It doesn't answer anybody's questions or concerns. Now is the time to stop. So we're going to need everybody, though. It's all hands on deck. And we can stop it. I feel. Don't you think we can, Jim?
Yes.
So the second thing tonight, there's a handout here. This is the 4 senators that sponsored this bill. And there's a number down here, the legislative hotline number. Everybody needs to call. You need to call all your friends and tell them to call. We need to flood them with phone calls. And we can do this. I know we can. So thank you all for being here tonight. And I feel really good about everybody to turn out. Yes?
Yeah, so I saw this flyer, but it doesn't tell me what this legislation is. Is it for the offenders coming to the community or getting them back out of our community? What is this legislation?
These are the prime sponsors. There's 4 senators that sponsored the bill.
They're for it.
They're
for it. The bill
They started it on the Senate side.
They're asking what the bill is. They're asking what the bill is.
5163.
I think it's on there. It's, you can see up at the top, it says Senate Bill
Kevin.
5163.
Kevin, she was just wanting to know if they were for the predators to get out or for the predators to stay locked up.
They created the bill to do that.
To let them out, okay.
Put them in your neighborhood.
so we do have somebody who's well versed in that, so we're going to ask Jim Walsh if he can just come up and give a brief on what this bill is and why they proposed it. And again, we will have questions at the end, so you'll see me. If you guys start asking questions, I'll come up and be the moderator. So don't take any offense if I stop comments so we can continue the programming, okay? Jim Walsh.
This is fantastic. You guys are doing exactly what free people need to do when bad things are tried to be forced on you from Olympia or wherever. So, I mean, thanks to Sarah and Kendall and Carrie. I mean, these gals are doing heroic work, and that is what leadership is. Give them a hand. So this project is kind of the tip of the spear. Although Tenino is getting it like first and worst, this is happening all around Washington. And the style, the manner in which this project is trying to go forward, we're seeing it all over the place. Now, there is state law. You've heard a couple of people refer to RCW. That's the Revised Code of Washington. That's statutory law in this state. And the RCW section that speaks to how these transitional housing projects go, it all appears in RCW chapter 71, and then you have to drill down into a bunch of subparts. And the sheriff, and he did a great job, the sheriff is looking for another section of RCW which doesn't really talk about how these projects are supposed to go. He's just looking for the law enforcement perspective on how to treat somebody who walks off from this facility. And that RCW Section 9, an older section of the law, has to do with prisoners and escaping prisoners and things like that. But the law that bill that Kevin was referring to changed is in that Section 71. And that describes how these transitional housing projects are supposed to work. And you're going to hear, and you probably already heard, the people who support these projects talk about community custody. This is this concept that the governor and other people support. And the idea is they want to empty out prisons and corrections facilities and put the people, the prisoners, the inmates, into communities where they will be watched and hopefully rehabilitated. Well, the only problem with community custody in this case is, as you've heard, these inmates have already been deemed incorrigible. They're impossible or extremely difficult to rehabilitate. They are the highest level risk sex offenders. And they were on McNeil Island because they were incorrigible and the highest risk sex offenders. So if we're going to put them back into the community for custody, we have to make absolutely sure the community agrees to the custody. And I get the impression this community has some serious questions about this custody. So you are doing the best thing you can do. I mean, in Olympia, for lawmakers in the Capitol, we can't stop this from happening. An injunction in court is the best way to stop this from happening right now. But what we can do, and what you can help us do, is refine that RCW 71 so that it says more clearly what one of these facilities has to be and what the operator has to do before the facility can be operated. And not let them cut corners through the legal process of getting one of these things set up. If the law says there has to be a public hearing and a public meeting to discuss, that has to be done before the first inmate moves into the facility. And if the law says there has to be a 30-day advance notice, then there has to be a 30-day advance notice. And most importantly, if the law says there has to be perimeter security, and 24-hour coverage, then there has to be hard security and 24-hour coverage. We can't let these operators cut corners on the law in getting their permitting to open up their facilities. Now, we see how when other parts of the state want to delay a project from taking off, they use the letter of the law to delay the permitting of the project. That's what we need to do. That's what you need to do here. Let's get up to speed on that RCW 71, which talks about these facilities, and use every sentence in the law to make sure that this facility has complied completely with the requirements in order to get a facility permitted up and running. And the great thing about what you're doing here is this is the tip of the spear. If you can hold this project accountable and make sure that they're not putting high-risk sex offenders in your residential neighborhood, then the rest of the state will follow you. And I think that'll be good for everybody's safety and every kid's security. So congratulations. And don't doubt that what you're doing is right. This is public safety and public health done the right way. So keep doing what you're doing. Yes, it was. This idea of community custody, when you talk about this in the abstract, it sounds not so bad, right? Well, we want people to be rehabilitated, we want them back in their communities.
They have to live somewhere.
Yes, but they'll make, if some of them are true believers, they think that this is the best way to rehabilitate someone. If you keep them closer to their community, the theory goes, they will have the best chance to see the error of their ways and change their behaviors. Except in practice, it is not so successful.
So, I was told that this wasn't a transitional housing, this is gonna be a permanent housing. So, the 5 people that are supposed to be moving in this house, I mean, it's gonna be like a prison if they can only go out with chaperones, and then that's gonna leave one chaperone with. So, eventually, if it's gonna be like a prison, there's no walls, no borders, they are gonna, I would venture to say, they're gonna revolt and jump ship.
Well, I mean, we don't know for sure, but given their histories and given the actual, documented analysis that has put these people where they are now, that's a risk. You're right, I misspoke slightly. They use the term transitional housing as kind of a blanket term. Not all community custody facilities are transitional, you're right. Some of them are permanent, but a lot of the process by which a transitional housing, which is a true halfway house, and a more permanent solution in community custody, the way these projects are permitted follow the same guidelines. Except this is supposed to be more secure, and from what I've seen of this project, I'm not convinced it's secure.
What, at this point, is the most effective thing people can do with respect to interacting with the legislature?
Good question. Show up on Thursday and call, email. Now, another interesting thing about this project is where it is outside of Tenino is kind of at a sweet spot among 3 different legislative districts. We had to actually go back and look up exactly whose district it was in. It's in the 35th legislative district. And those representatives are Travis Couture and Dan Griffith. And I know, in fact, they are probably leading the opposition to this. I know they're up to speed on this project and the risks that it poses. My district, which is the 19th, and that's me and a guy called Joel McIntyre, comes right up near it. And then the 20th legislative district, which is Peter Abarno and Ed Orcutt are the reps, is also right near it, coming up from the south. I'm coming into Tenino from the west. And so the three districts all kind of touch each other right about where this facility is set to be. But it is in the 35th, so it's Grippy and Couture are your main people. The challenge is, we're all on your side. The challenge is those who are pushing this kind of project and pushing the whole agenda are the ones we have to reach. And that's where some well-planned public events and direct actions will help get the message to the people who are for this kind of project. All right, well, thanks so much. And really, what you do
As you can see, there's no plan of attack off the table. We are hitting this from all angles. Sheriff Sanders is doing his part. Commissioners, the Thurston County Commissioners are doing their part. Legislation is doing their part. We do have a follow-up meeting with them and DSHS this week. And so we are here putting all the pressure on in every sense of the word. The community, you guys are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Those call to actions that we do share on that Facebook page, if you're not a part of that public community page yet, please join us. It's Tenino Residents Against Supreme Living. We are doing deep dives into each of the individuals that claim to be co-owners of that company, so we're looking at all angles, I promise you that. The school supports us, so the superintendent of Tenino supports us and is writing a statement. We should be getting that tomorrow, I believe. Tuesday, the Board of Commissioners in Thurston County are meeting again. Their meeting this week is at 6 p.m. If you did not have an opportunity to make public comment or testify in front of them yet, feel free to reach out to them to do so during their meetings as well. We keep showing up. That's the thing. The moment we stop showing up, we secede, and we're not going to do that. So every avenue. Many hands make light work. So if you are an investigative mind and you want to do some digging, we need you on the team. If you're somebody with a loud voice and has no problem standing out in the rain, snow, whatever, we need you. So everybody is important in this fight, and we really appreciate all efforts so far that we have done collectively as a community. And I'm standing firm. I am with Kevin on this. We can stop this. It's possible. And I believe that all the avenues that we're doing, we will stop this from happening. One moment before we take questions, let me just gather my team and see if there's any further comments they'd like to make before we take questions. And I also want to touch base on the transitional housing. So DSHS website talks about community transition. So they've been outside of the community, outside of the real world. So when they're saying transition, that's what they're talking about, is reintegrating them back into society. So that's the transition. So tonight, we're just, I guess, a bit unfortunate guinea pigs in that. But we won't, that's the, when I say transition, and when you guys have seen me talk about that, that's what I'm talking about, is the community transition back into society, not necessarily this house as a transitional home. And then another thing I want to say about SVPs. Now, nationwide, historically, only 7 of these individuals get released nationwide. And what they're asking to do is to bring 5 of them into our rural community. So statistically, it doesn't make any sense. Practicality doesn't make any sense. Safety, it doesn't make any sense. And again, that's why we are so adamant about ensuring that every avenue that we can take to get this from ceasing, desist immediately. Okay, so we'll open the floor for questions. I am hard of hearing, so if you don't mind, let's just form like a line over here, or come to the front, or just really project so we can hear what you say. All right, I'll moderate. Okay, go ahead.
Do you want to just remind, we live in Thurston County, a lot of people who work for the state. Can you ask that people know whistleblowers inside of DSHS? We've had a lot of them come forward, but we need as many as possible to get a better inside information.
Okay. Yeah, so Tenino does house a lot of people that work at the state called Tenino Home. And so if you are an insider inside DSHS, Glenn Morgan over here, and you want to be a whistleblower, we can also link you up with our attorney as well, who we are in the process of finalizing counsel, but we've made our decision on who will represent us. We're just not disclosing that tonight. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Anne Marie. I live a half a mile down the road from this place. I was sexually violated when I was 12 years old. That experience hijacked my high school years. It crippled my college years. And it wasn't until I got in my 20s and got therapy that I was able to start to figure out the tools all those decades back. And so now I'm sitting here a half a mile down the road, and what I want to urge all of you tonight is we can call and we can campaign and we can have a logical argument for this. But it is the emotional stories. It is your stories. It is your history. It is your experience. If any of you have shared anything that I have done, man, woman, child, those are the stories that will reach better than right or wrong, give or take. It's our stories that we as a community can pull together and be vulnerable and exposed and let them see our hearts and where we stand on this. I just want to ask you to remind you when you do make those phone calls and do make those pleas to remember the stories. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable in front of your community. That takes a lot of bravery and authenticity, and I'm so sorry that you experienced those things, but we're very thankful that you had the bravery to speak up, to encourage somebody else in this room that might have that same story. During the commissioners' meeting last week, there were 3 that testified, and each one of them broke my heart. And that we need to remember that humanity connection. Those stories really do matter, so thank you for the reminder. Yes, sir?
This is really funny. You guys have set up a pack. Is there a way to make it easy for us to donate? I know we have a lot of people here. The small donations are going to count. I think it's important that everybody contributes. This pack is what's going to do it. So if you can let us know how we do that, how we can contribute easily, then more, whatever it may be. Thank you.
I think that's a very good question.
Like you just said earlier, we are setting up a Tenino pack, so we are able to take checks. If you want to reach out to Kendall and I, we can also do Venmo, and then we also have an account through the Tenino pack at OB Credit Union. So if you have questions about wanting to help out with onboarding the attorney fees, please reach out to us at the Tenino pack website. We can collect the checks tonight. Feel free to get a hold of Kendall and I after the meeting. Any other questions?
Yeah, do we know yet what, like, permitting procedures, they open any sort of permitting process prior to this, or do we know what the state of events? I know they changed the numbers that they were accepting, or they were proposing the house. Do we know how that works, or if they have to have any sort of permitting process prior to this?
No, so they originally had proposed 11 creditors to be in this home. And when they found out that there was a permitting process involved with that, they dropped down to 5. They actually dropped down several times to different numbers until they were able to skirt around all of the laws that were in place, and there was no special permit that was needed for this facility.
I also wanted just to piggyback on your comment. This is not a secured facility. The home down 140th Avenue does not have Wi-Fi internet. CenturyLink was out there, Comcast was out there, no one is dropping a line. So I think it is a valid concern that how are we going to keep an eye on these sexually violent predators if there is no high-speed internet to keep these cameras going? So I really think that needs to sink in with you. Also, we have 1 deputy. I know Derek Sanders mentioned that we've got 7 working, but we've got 1 in our district. So if there's no high-speed internet and someone takes off on foot, where are they? How do we even know? There's so many unanswered questions that Supreme Living did not answer, and they jumped through the hoops to get this going. So I really want you guys to let that sink in. It's a scary situation. And they're coming in our neighborhood February 1st. So we need everything dialed in before then, and that's in a week and a half.
My question is how do we know what they look like if they come? I mean, how do you know if they're able to go out with their monitors in downtown Tenino? How do we know what they look like? If they show up in my property, in the back of my property, we live about a mile and a half through the woods to our place. How do we know what they look like? You know?
So on one of the flyers, we have this one. It's got the level 1, 2, and 3. The QR code will take you to the Washington State Sex Offender Registry. You can enter an address and multiple will pop up. You'd be surprised how many are actually already here in our community. Not SVPs, but level 1, 2s, and 3s. And there's another website called familywatchdog.us. You can enter a name or an address there as well. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the Sheriff's Office. Those numbers are on here in Washington State Patrol. We should be getting notification, and I know we're on hyper alert right now, and we're on high vigilance, so we will notify, I think, too, through our Facebook group, because we're watching this. We're not, right now, we're up a lot right now, the three of us. So we're watching this, and we're going to do our due diligence too. I know law enforcement's going to do their piece, but this is our community, this is our home, and so we're doing our piece too. So we will also be sharing those photos as soon as we have them.
Have you ever thought of trying to publish their pictures, put out posters, you know, of these 5 offenders, and start posting them all over the county?
Sheriff's Office. Yeah, and if we get to one of this house to go, we will share that on social media.
I don't mean just online, but you know, public posters, put them all over the place, you know.
Yes, you can. They are not breaking any law by posting pictures around town, correct? Okay. Yes. So feel free to share images. It's fine. Yes, sir. The Tenino hat.
So we live in a community. I think a lot of what I'll call sheepdogs walking around.
Do you mind speaking up just a little bit? Sorry. I'll tell you.
So we live in a community where I say there's a lot of sheepdogs, what I call sheepdogs walking around. And I'm wondering if you share. I live on 140th, we live about a mile and a half from the house. What the rights and restrictions we have for protecting our property and our children. Well, that's a whole legal part that I'm talking about to get back on stage for. To keep things pretty simple, if someone is trespassing on your property, there's no right to deadly force. Do not shoot someone who's simply trespassing on your property. That's how you go to prison. I don't want that. And that's been my biggest concern on all this stuff. I'm not concerned about the community at this point. I'm concerned that these sex offenders are going to get killed. Great, but I've never been placed in areas where I'm good against 99% of people walking around are carrying. So that was my first thought. But that being said, where you start to use deadly force, it's like it's being threatened, right? So if someone is trespassing and they have the potential to harm you, can't just use their standing on their property, call us, work with them, especially if they escape. We've got to do the class and tell me now. The second part of that is if someone enters your home, that what we may, the way that the burglary law is written is that you can basically presume that they're there to harm you. At that point, deadly force is not there. I'm not the attorney. So that's a prosecutor. What I can tell you is that if this house goes in, everyone's going to have to be vigilant, right? That doesn't mean going out and beating up people that look like sex offenders. What that looks like is being vigilant and easier, right? Making sure that we are contacted as the sheriff's office. We don't have one deputy, but if you think this is on our radar, they don't know what's going on, they're going to understand how to prioritize stuff to make sure that we get out to you. So, if we don't have a fixed, we have deputies that regularly work the area, but we don't have, it can change from that based on staff.
Are there any more questions for the group up here on? And if you want to, we can't hear you. I don't think the rest of the room can hear you either. If you want to come up here and address some more of those questions, or be on stage so you can address those questions if they come up. I'm happy to invite you back up on stage, sure.
Okay.
Are there any questions why he's joining us up here for the group, or what we can do as a community? Ma'am, we can't hear you. So what I can tell you, the 2 residential monitors that will be on 140th Avenue, the job description is actually on the Supreme Living's website. Right now, their qualifications are a 12th grade education or GED, a COVID vaccine, and a valid driver's license. It doesn't say anything on there that they need to have any there's no background check on there. It doesn't talk about if they've worked with sex offenders or criminals before. So again, hop onto the Supreme Living's website, the residential monitors, the GED education or high school diploma, valid driver's license.
Man or woman?
Yeah, man or woman. A woman was discouraged. In a 3-day training. Yes, you're correct. In a 3-day training.
Are they armed?
They are armed. They're paid $18 to $22 an hour, and no, they're not armed. Unfortunately, this is a for-profit company who purchased this home. This is not a home through the Department of Social and Health Services or through the Department of Corrections. So DSHS and DOC has very different rules. This is, again, a for-profit company with minimal requirements for this residential monitor. So yes, 3 days training, GED education.
But let me add, that's what we're doing here. We are trying to change the laws so these things have to happen for every house that goes in to house these sexually violent predators. We need to make sure that there's a standard that's being met. The people who are buying these facilities to run them are qualified. They know what these people are. When we met the man who is the supervisor that was hired, he said that he was looking forward to gardening with these people. He has no idea what these people will do to him. He is elderly. He has no stamina. He's not fit to be there. And so that's what we are doing here, is trying to create laws so that there are standards that need to be met. And moving forward, hopefully, is a little easier than this transition's been.
So, a gal brought up 4 questions from her area. So, one of the questions is, will companies hired to perform residential home care needs, examples, housekeeping, plumbing, electrical, home care, be informed that they are entering a property housing violent offenders? Well, I'm going to make the assumption probably not, and here's why, because even on their residential monitoring, it lists nothing about them monitoring those who will be in the house with them 24 hours a day, that they are going to be supervising sex offenders. So my assumption on that is probably not.
Nothing in the law that says.
The next question is, are people allowed to visit the home? Are children allowed to visit the home? I don't know the answer to that, but what I can say is that I have seen on their list of things that there's a visitor's log, people can come and go, they can't have family, they will have common quarters where they can have visitors. So I don't know that children will be allowed there, but I don't trust the individual that's running this at all with the way that she tap danced around a lot of the questions that were very pointed. Protocols, she wasn't able to produce any kind of protocols or handouts for the original meeting that happened on the 11th. And she said, and I quote, I have 9 grandchildren, and I would suggest to say that your children are safer with these men in this house than if they weren't. And end quote. So I do not trust whether they will allow that or not, but I would just, if you live in the area, be hypervigilant, so you can call in, that would seem to be a risk. The next question is, will there be knives in the kitchen? This is something I've thought about. Other household items that can be used as weapons. Again, we don't represent Supreme Living. None of us ever would in our lives represent a company that is establishing such gross, disgusting things in our community, so I can't answer those questions that are specific to Supreme Living. And has the Realtors Association been notified that companies are purchasing properties for this reason?
Yes,
Yes, they have.
Yes.
I do know that there were a few realtors at the meeting last week, so I'm sure the news has been pretty quick in the realtor world.
They're working with council themselves to try to figure out how they can, just like everybody else right now.
Are there any more questions? We have time for 2 more. So.
First of all, thank you so much for the work that the three of you are doing. I'm sure I'm echoing everyone here by saying thank you so much for that. So we understand that these violent sexual predators have to be supervised for the remainder of their lives. Why is the decision to move them into a community as opposed to keeping them in McNeil Island? Is there an end state that they're closing this facility for some reason, or is deemed inhabitable for violent sexual predators? What do we know about why they can't just stay on the island?
So, and maybe the senator can help me with this one, but I'm still trying to track it down, but I've been told that at some point in time there's a federal court ruling. Basically, there's a lawsuit that sexual offenders are just basically being committed for the rest of their lives, and while I agree with that personally, there's always an opposition to anything that you do. And that a court basically heard the case and said that the state has a duty to offer a less restrictive alternative. That's where this whole terminology came from. So now, I haven't really had a chance to, a little busy, haven't had a chance to follow that lead up. So maybe the senator knows a little more about it, I don't know, but that's kind of where I'm getting the idea of where I don't think the legislature necessarily just randomly made this up. Most of these things start with complaints and such.
Now, the sheriff's right, the least restrictive alternative is the term of legal order, and that's what the state is encouraged to look for. Remember, some of these offenders finished their prison sentences, or some of them never had them, because they were deemed not fit to stand trial. So they're in a gray area. That's why it's DSHS, which is the Social and Health Services. It's not EOC, the corrections, that is actually got custody. So they're in kind of a strange limbo. And the court pressure has encouraged the governor's administration to decide that they're going to, empty McNeil Island of anyone who's there. So they're moving everyone off the island and putting them into community custody, which satisfies the least restrictive alternative.
And why is it being spread out the one, like an island on somewhere else? Like, and is there one that haven't, are they pushing all of these kind of
So far, the first one, the most important, because they're so.
I know sometimes forums like this, they make more questions come to mind. So, again, if there are legal, if there are legislative law questions, please use that hotline. Call or email your legislator immediately when you leave here. You can call the hotline anytime. You can leave a voice memo on any of their numbers. They are also on the Facebook page. Carolina, do you want to make a comment? Are you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I just was going to ask.
Do you want to use the mic or? Okay.
So in 2021, the law changed, basically the fair share law. So while a less restrictive alternative housing existed, there were only a couple of places in the state that housed individuals, and they had to go through a court process for that. That has now become way more lenient, and every county has the burden of a certain number of individuals. Apparently, Thurston County has
outside Thurston County, so kind of that's where we're at. This is all brand new for the county. We're trying to look into historical context of what has been done before, but unfortunately the legislator has tightened a lot of those loops that before we could do some things, we can no longer do them because the law has changed. So the county where we're at right now is we're basically throwing everything at the wall and hoping something sticks, and once that sticks is what we're going to be going for. We do have an executive session on Tuesday morning where we're going to be talking with our attorneys about every possible legal option that we have. I've also brought down, someone sent us some Kitsap County ordinance that was passed in 2019, and we're trying to see if that's something that we can retrofit. But again, a lot of those code changes will have to be updated with the new law changes that passed in 2021. So that's just kind of where we're at with the county's perspective on this.
Yeah. And I said 2 questions, and so we have one, and so the gentleman in the back, the ball cap, you had a question, so last question.
My question kind of, we talk legal, right? So they've obviously skirted the legal path to get where they're at. My question is, when it comes down to it, we got less than a week. We're a little bit right on a week, right? So if we block the place, or we don't let them in, I grew up here, I ran these halls as a kid. When they show up, we got less than a week, a little bit on a week before they do. If we don't let them in this house, what's the legal matter on that?
Well, thanks for holding me in, and I'm not coming back this time. Well, once again, I'm kind of getting the prosecutor question as a sheriff, and that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Now, to caveat your question, not to circumvent it, but my understanding is that someone may already be there.
Whoa.
So that's what we've been told, that someone may already be in the house. But again, all that we got as a sheriff's office is just a standard notification. We get the notifications, and if it's not a level 3, it doesn't become that big popular push out, right? That's level 1, 2, and 3. And so I guess that would be the first part. But in the event that there was a civil disturbance that occurred at the house, the sheriff's office is going to have to respond, obviously, and keep order. That is our job. But how involved we get in that is going to be difficult to say. Part of me, calling me on the spot here, part of me wants to call the state patrol and tell them this is a state issue, clean it up. Another part of me says that that's kind of the inaction from the sheriff that I don't like. I'd rather make a decision and live with it than sit back and do nothing. So what I will say is that I have a week, so I get to go ask the prosecutor some questions here tomorrow. But I think that with everything, right, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things through everything that we do. And one of the things that made me really proud about this community was that this is obviously a super negative issue. No one's happy. No one. I haven't come across a single person that's like, well, what about? There's no one. And so to see everyone in the Maytown area yesterday come together and build a playground and turn something that's been so negative into something positive and constructive, and also take a stance that we're not really afraid of you, that this is our community and you're just visiting at this point, and your visit's probably going to be short. That's the kind of action that I'd prefer the community to take. I don't want to see violent retaliation that's unjustified. Obviously, I'd hope that the ordinary citizen doesn't want to create unnecessary work for an understaffed sheriff's office. At the same time, we're on your side. We're on your side. But there's always a right thing. There's always a right way to do things. And what separates us from them is the moral compass that guides us. So I would just hope that everyone will stay cordial and we allow the commissioners to get to work, that you allow our sheriff's office a chance to do the right thing before we get too far into the fear and letting that consume us. So that's kind of my
call to actions. First things for us, thank you again so much for taking time away from your families. Thank you for all that are in attendance who have been helping us make change as we move forward and doing your due diligence to look at every law and every action and every authority that you have in the room, from Thurston County Commissioners, to Sheriff, to Senate, to Senators, to the legislators, to the school staff. All of you have really been incredible. So call to action. We want to know what to do, right? Call the hotline. Again, even if you called it once, call it again. Show up Thursday at 4:30 on the Capitol Hill. Get that flyer here. It's got all the information. Come grab a sign so you have some signage when we get there. Make your voices be heard. If you live in the half-mile radius of this home, we need you on this litigation process. We can't do it without you, in fact. So we need you to be bold and come up and see us this evening if you live within a half-mile radius of this house. If you're unsure, we have a map. We have worked this out for you to make it easier. If you are just a concerned citizen that wants to be a part of the litigation process, you also have to fill out a form. Sorry. So you also have to fill out a form. So please come see us after the meeting. Other things to do. 6 o'clock on Tuesday is the Thurston County Board of Commissioners meeting. You're invited to do that either Zoom or in person. The atrium, 3000 Pacific.
3000 Pacific Avenue.
3000 Pacific Avenue, Southeast in Olympia. Okay, well, again, thank you so much. We appreciate you guys' time.